Yo! So, if my ability to talk about obscure Pennsylvanian history is anything to go off of, it should be obvious that I was raised in Pennsylvania. Now, there are certainly pros and cons to living in Pennsylvania, one of these cons being you have to live in Pennsylvania. But there are certain pros too. For instance, we have access to the massive American highway system, which means we can escape Pennsylvania whenever we feel like it. Now, during your escape, you're going to notice a lot of signs including this one, and even this one. However, once you cross the border into Delaware, and depending on who you ask, that might actually be a worse decision, you're still going to come across these two signs, and this sign is going to be nowhere to be seen. Instead, you're going to see these all over the place. So, what are these? Well, in the US, we have two types of highways. Hey, what about the interstate? Two types of highways that we care about. Also, don't fucking question me again. We got federal highways, which cross state borders and are required to be marked off with this particular sign. But we also have state highways, which are contained entirely within a single state. States are permitted to design their own signs to mark off these roads, and here is where things get interesting. Do you remember this from before? That's the state route sign of Pennsylvania. The reason they chose this design in particular is because Pennsylvania calls itself the Keystone State, so they put a giant keystone on their route signs. In case you don't know what a keystone is, it's the thing on arches and Heinz bottles. The keystone is a very significant icon for Pennsylvanians, so I got curious to see what other states would represent themselves with. Unfortunately, as it turns out, some states don't have the same degree of cultural identity as Pennsylvania does, if you can believe it. States, for instance, like Delaware and Mississippi opted to have the default white circle on a black background design. And although this is acceptable and understandable for Delaware, whose only cultural contribution since the 1780s has been salmonella, I'm a little bit surprised that Mississippi didn't go with anything. I mean, where's that Southern pride you're always talking about, Mississippi? You could at least change the white circle for a white triangle to reference the... Actually, let's not finish that joke. Well, after skipping over all the signs that were white circles, state borders, or just plain boring, I've ended up with 6 highway designs with histories and cultural significance worth talking about, and I am going to explain where each of them came from. No, don't click away.
Glory, glory, hallelujah.
You fucking kidding me? We just talked about this. This may come as a shock, but Utah has a lot of Mormons. And one icon that's significant to the history of the Mormons is the Beehive, or as they claim it was called, Deseret in Jaredite, the language of Jared? The language of Jared when they came over to America. So, you know, their highway sign is Beehive. If you know anything about Utah or saw this video, you'd probably know that Deseret is often used to refer to the state of Utah itself. The significance of the Beehive does also go deeper than this, but I tried researching all the reasons for it, and for the love of Jared, is it a can of worms? Or, bees. If I want to do the topic justice, I'll have to make an entire video for it, so just for the time being, just take my word and don't question anything. Just like the Mormons.
We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful wizard of...
It's called the Sunflower State, and the sign's a sunflower. What? Not every symbol has to be some sort of biblically significant icon? Right, so New Mexico's design is interesting because they basically just slapped the state symbol on the default design. Like, it's as if they were originally not going to bother making their own design, and then just before they were about to go onto the road, some Banksy figure just snuck in and then stenciled all these designs on them. This symbol is known as the Zia sun and is very sacred to the indigenous Zia people living in New Mexico. It even appears on the flag, as well as, for an interesting period of time, the flag of Madison, Wisconsin, because the city wanted to represent their indigenous population on it. It was certainly a nice gesture, but the issue was none of the Indians living in Wisconsin ever used the Zia symbol. It would be kinda like if you tried representing a Russian minority living in your state with the fleur-de-lis. Point is, people wanted to lose it. They finally got their wish though, and as of July 2018, the flag of Madison, Wisconsin now looks like this. So, for a long time, New Hampshire used to have this attraction known as the Old Man in the Mountain, which was highly revered throughout the state. Probably because New Hampshire hadn't been relevant since the Revolutionary War, and a couple of oddly shaped rocks were the best thing they had going for an identity at the time. During the early 1900s, it was noted that the formation was beginning to deteriorate somewhat. The government began to fund efforts to preserve the rock, and much of these efforts had to do with plastering the old man's face on literally everything, turning him into a state icon. So, it's on their highway signs. If you're curious to know where the old man is now, it collapsed in 2003. On the Wikipedia page, there's these two comparison shots, and I never thought I could feel this upset about a rock, yet, here we are. Rest in peace, old man. What were you talking about again? Alright, gang sign. No, I mean, street gang. Fuck! Alright, this one isn't actually a state, but rather a United States territory. It's an archipelago in the Pacific known as the Northern Marianas Islands, and this is their highway sign. When I first saw it, I thought it was some sort of representation of the Marianas Trench, but apparently it's what we call a latte stone. Wait, no, it's a latte stone. Latte stone, there we are. So, similar to New Hampshire, the Northern Marianas Islands decided to put a rock on their road signs, but unlike New Hampshire, this rock has actual culture behind it. These stones were built by the Chamorro people of the Northern Marianas and were thought to be used as structures upon which they would build their houses. Because of the stone's unique shape, it's used as an icon for the Chamorro people and is even featured on the flag of the Northern Marianas Commonwealth. Oh, and of course there are highway signs. I talked for 5 minutes about highway sign designs. How am I supposed to end this video? I know. Alright, so, I'm going to list now 3 topics, and I want you guys to vote for what I should do next in the comments. First idea I had was to explain why this tiny part of Russia exists and why it's separated from the rest of the mainland. My next idea was to cover a time when the US and Britain almost went to war over a dead pig. And finally, I wanted to explain to people what different types of mathematical notation meant. For instance, the plus sign, the minus sign, and whatever the hell this is. So go ahead and vote, and maybe next time I won't do a video about an incredibly niche topic while I was preparing for my finals. I need a nap.